Jharkhand 2017. 3 years after Narendra Modi's and his party came to power, Mariam Ansari, a group of young men had gathered outside. They all were looking at WhatsApp on their mobile phones. The moment she looked at the phone she fainted. He had only left an hour ago. Why is this happening to him? There were a lot of people watching it. He was Muslim and his attacker was Hindu, according to the narrator. She went to the station, they said go to the hospital, and he later died. Prior to Modi coming to power, there was intercommunal violence in India. Sometimes this involves lynching of Muslims, Hindus and Sikhs, says Chris, but definitely we can say that after 2014 there are increased numbers of lynching toward their Muslim population. It began with a speech that the Prime Minister made. Mr. Modi said that India was participating in what he called the Pink Revolution, says OKR. The Pink Revolution refers to the export of beef and the sort of bloody image of meat. In response to that, BJP states criminalized the possession of beef. After that, the violence began. His silence is heard by the people as appreciation. It's a clear signal that go ahead, says Nilanjan, nothing will be done against you. If there is evidence that certain people have been guilty of things like lynching, it's not the business of a political party to condone them or felicitate them, says Swapan. At the same time, to generalize from this incident to this is the standard practice. In India, this is the character of the BJP, is, to his mind, as unwarranted assumption. If you look back at now, the lynching are the beginnings, says Arundhati, of things that became bigger and bigger. There was an early warning system of what was coming. 2019 India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has secured a second 5-year term in the country's historic general election. The BJP won in areas which they had never won in. Modi had really, truly become a pan-India. A victory for Mr. Modi was interpreted as a mandate for the muscular nationalism that Mr. Modi and his government had been projecting, says Nilangan. The fundamental aim to Hinduism, the way that India functions, and irrevocably change the political, social, and cultural nature of India, says Chris. It is the most centralized government that has ever been run in India. There's almost no pushback to any kind of order that comes from Modi, says Hartosh. Kashmir 2019 Habil Iqbal, many rumors were going. The government is going to change Jammu and Kashmir. What the political were saying made it clear that something sinister is in the offing. Article 370, which gives special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, says Swapan. We regard the government is going to change Jammu and Kashmir. What the political were saying made it clear that something sinister is in the offing. Article 370, which gives special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, says Swapan. We regard the Kashmir is ruled from New Delhi, says Christoph. A new policy of Indian is taking place. Swapan says it was a hugely popular decision with the country. There were issues with visa relations with Pakistan. Habil says the government knew that there would be huge protests, but the response of the state has been the same, to suppress and to silence the protesters. People had been taken in the dead of the night and they were subjected to extreme physical torture. I am deeply concerned about the impact of recent actions by the government of India on the human rights of Kashmiris, say Michelle, including restrictions on internet communication and peaceful assembly and the detention of local political leaders and activities. Kashmir is very important for Mr. Modi to harness the Hindu vote in other parts of the country were Muslim states, says Nilanjan. The Muslim migration into Assam has been for economic reasons. The Hindu migration was basically because of religious persecution and edging out the minorities from Bangladesh, says Swapan. If you want to create a modern state where citizens should have all the rights, at least you should define who your citizens are, says Swadesh. In every country, there is a national population register. What it said was, if you could show documentary evidence of your ancestors being in the state of Assam before 1971, you would be included in this national register of citizens, says Oka. No, it will become a problem. Rickshaw driver Na had a problem like this. In addition, the authorities said there was a problem with his wife Zahara, so she was arrested too. Arundhati says this is not a country that is trying to manage a refugee problem. This is a country that's manufacturing refugees out of its own. The CAA says that those people who migrated to India without documentation says occur before December 31, 2014, would be given citizenship automatically, unless they were Muslim. According to Hartosh, it was not against any particular community or group. Swapan says unfortunately, it was misinterpreted in some quarters as meaning that it could lead to the citizenship of some people being taken away. This bill will not harm even a little bit any minority, especially our Muslim brothers and sisters, because the bill only gives citizenship. In this bill, they are targeting a community without naming it. It violates the basic structure of the Constitution. You're just putting a whole population into
insecurity. All they wanted was one march to the parliament to register their protest against the CAA and the NRC, says Safara. Instead they were being beaten up. Donald Trump supported Mr. Modi. However, fights are still happening. It lasted
a long time. 500 injured, 53 people killed. The Amnesty report on the violence in Delhi showed that the police did not act as it should have acted. Swapan says in the larger scheme of things, the Delhi riots were not important, but they were important to the media because it means less work and you can get good media footage just at your doorstep. The first act of Mr. Modi after becoming Prime Minister in the second tenure was to make an amendment in the UAPA which permitted the government to declare individual citizens as terrorists, says Nilanjan. Anybody could be declared a terrorist and put behind bars and would not be able to get bail for a long period of time. Sephora was put into complete isolation. She was pregnant with her first child. Crispthos says the irony is that when after the riots were over the victims became the guilty and were accused of being responsible for the riots. So many were put in jail and are still in jail. Alishan, a journalist reporting on hate crimes and the rise of extreme politics. India is a state where calls for genocide against Muslims are on the rise. Muslim Parliament talked about how Muslims should be eradicated from the face of the earth. Reporting today has become more risky, more dangerous, more difficult. Quite frankly, based on where we are today, the path looks even rockier, says Siddharth.